rate cut, cut the MPR, and then most likely we'll see a case where consumers are generally encouraged to borrow. So when you borrow, the propensity of you to spend increases, and you are willing to invest in businesses. Your sense begins to open around investing in businesses and pumping money into your businesses, which are, largely speaking, small, medium, and micro businesses.
Aren't we overstretching the central bank here? And I'm going to play the devil's advocate.
Good.
That the government at the fiscal level needs to spend. But that is constrained. Budget 2017, 350 billion so far. They're looking at maybe 500 before December 31st. I don't see that happening 5 weeks from now. And that is out of how much was our national budget for 2017? And then you have 2018.
Yes.
And right now, it doesn't look like 2018 budget will start, Happy New Year, January 1st, 2018. So where does that leave us in terms of the capacity of the Buhari's administration to actually spend, not only to grow, accelerate, but consolidate? Good.
Interesting. What should happen, in my view, is that we are seeing a case where inflation is decelerating. And that, to my mind, and based on numbers that we've crunched and calculated, we most likely will see lower inflation next year. So that, combined with broad stability in FX rate, should lead to a case where the CBN is willing to cut interest rates. And when you cut interest rates, what you are doing indirectly, or let me say directly, if we look at it that way, is you are allowing the government to boost the economy by borrowing at a lower rate.
But folks want to see this rate of deceleration, this inflation train, burning train, decelerate at a faster pace than 0.07% that we saw. If I see 100 basis points, I see 50 basis points,
good,
perhaps we can have a different conversation.
So we should be talking about those numbers next year. So their forecast is for about...
We're talking about them
12,
today.
No, so I'm talking about those numbers will be published next year. We will see those numbers.
But we've got to do something.
So what has to happen? The only thing that could happen is a case where the government is prepared to spend more. The revenue stream
has the money to spend.
They don't really have the money to spend.
And so you don't spend what you don't have.
So for you to spend, you might borrow. And this is where lower interest rate, in my view, is compelling. 1. 2, bear in mind also that they have gone to the Eurobond market to borrow $3 billion. What they have communicated to us in recent months is that they are looking to cut back on the volume or size of the treasury bills that we have outstanding as a country.
I'm sure everybody out there would want to ask you, is that we borrowed $3 billion. Where does the money go?
Okay, so that money could be used in one or two ways. What they've communicated before now, the Ministry of Finance, is that they look to cut back by about 1 trillion naira the volume of treasury bills that we have outstanding. So if that happens, what it means is that the supply of treasury bills to the market reduces, and that should, as a result, bring down interest rates on treasury bills, because by the time you reduce the supply, what happens is that the market appetite sort of grows in such a way that when the government offers lower interest rates, the market grabs it. So when you have a case where you are borrowing at a lower rate, it is positive for you as a government, so that should encourage you borrowing to accelerate growth. That's 1. 2, bear in mind also that we started this year at a case where the Nigerian government was borrowing at 17%.
These are all market stories.
Good.
And we all know. We're talking about, and some of our viewers are saying, the structural reforms, that's on Twitter, should go side by side with fiscal stimulus. So we want to do fiscal stimulus, which is cash, money on the table. Yes. But we need structural reforms. Thank you, Kwemosa, for sending this to us from London. So what structural reforms is the area where people think we don't have what it takes to do the surgery?
What we need, I've said it earlier, is for us to invest in infrastructure. To do that, you need to either use internally generated cash flows, or you borrow, or you do some form of a lease of your assets.
But that's not structural reforms.
So no. In terms of the structure, what you look at are key sectors of the economy where you believe that there are needs for you to invest in. So I put to you, for instance, the road, the Ministry of Works housing, for instance. So where we believe that the bulk of the investment should be going are some of these areas. So if we invest in them and we would generate employment, that is certain because people are going to work on them. And also you would generate the ability of consumers to spend more because they now are employed or more of them are employed. So you drive spending in that regard as well. So if all this do not happen, we estimate that we need about $25 billion as a country for us to fix the infrastructure gap in this country.
But do we have a plan to bring in that $25 billion?
So for now, it doesn't look to me like the country has a plan. But what I have seen so far is a case where we are just approaching the matter as in a
piecemeal.
In piecemeal basis. Exactly.
Just looking at $1.3 billion, $1.5 billion, and another $750 billion.
They are largely,
it doesn't look like
largely piecemeals, and we need a case where we consolidate on this and be focused as a country and take that giant step.
Do you think we need to roll out $150 billion plan, spread it over the table, spread out the map of the country?
Absolutely.
Do you think that's the reform we need?
Absolutely, that's what we need. We need to identify how much we need to close that gap. And we sense that about $25 billion, within the next 10 years, should take us to where we want to be. But I have not seen on paper where the government, has published the plans to generate.
I haven't heard any government official talk about $25 billion. It's just about $500 million, $400 million.
Those are piecemeal.
That's a piecemeal.
They wouldn't take us anywhere.
$500 million?
They wouldn't take us anywhere.
They
wouldn't take us anywhere.
With the exchange
so
rate?
We need more to support and drive economic growth.
So we need what you call the lion heart.
Correct.
So that we can take the lion's share.
Correct.
Okay, we're going to come back after the break. Let's continue this conversation. How do we get some portfolio investment into the entire mix? Let's just continue this with Tajuddin Ibrahim from Chapel Hill, Denham. I hope you're getting the lion's share of this discussion. Let's come back to you in 2.